Back to Seeing Sun here by Silas House and Neela Vishwani. Today we are on page 225. 225. There we go. Page 225 to 242. And this is a letter written by River to Mina. And this is a long letter. River writes a long letter. Actually, there's a couple letters in here. There's a few letters in here. February 28th, 2009. Dear Mina, I was really sorry to read about your mom and you fighting. It made me feel bad for both of you. I thought both of you had good points, and in the end, she was really nice to come in and make up with you like that. But I have to tell you that you were pretty rough on her. If I had someone said some of that stuff to my parents or to Mama, they would have busted my hind end. I guess I should tell you that busting a hind end is not as bad as it sounds. So bust a hind end means spanking. Mrs. Tempton, our new math teacher, who is not from here, says that people in Appalachia exaggerate everything. It's people from Kentucky. They exaggerate everything. It's just the way we are. I mentioned it to Miss Stidman, and she said, that's because we are a storytelling culture. Anyway, to bust someone's hind end just means that you get a slap on the butt. So it's not as bad as it sounds. Anyway, I have gotten off the subject as usual. So back to the subject. Like I was saying, you were pretty tough on her. So I felt sorry for her. But on the other hand, it's good that you've started to stand up for yourself a little bit more and to tell people how you feel about things. Mama says that life is too short to be unhappy, and that a lot of times people are unhappy just because they failed to speak up for themselves. I see your point about them leaving you for 7 years. That would bother me too. Dad has gone off to Biloxi to find work, but that's different because at least Mom stayed here to be with me, and it's not halfway around the world like India is from America and all that. When she explained it, I still didn't really get why they left you behind, but I believed her, didn't you? When she said that she didn't want it to be that way. It must be one of those things that we'll understand when we get older. Half the time when I say I don't understand something, a grown-up tells me that I will understand when I get older. Did you get to see Coraline then? I've been wanting to go because I loved the book, but I've been so busy I haven't been able to. A kid I know saw it and said it freaked him out and that the 3D made him a little bit sick. He loved the book too and was mad that they changed it in the movie so that Coraline lives in America instead of England. I have a secret and you can't tell anybody. I love that Beyonce song you were talking about, that Single Lady song or whatever it's called. Have you seen the video? The cheerleaders at school have been doing a dance routine to it. So every day when school is out, we see them practicing it on the yard outside the church, and we hear the song. And some of the boys start acting stupid and acting like they can do that dance. So don't tell anybody I like a Beyonce song, okay? But it makes me want to dance. I thought it was pretty genius of you to rubber band a flashlight to the springs under the bed. The march in Frankfurt is tomorrow, the protest. So I better get in bed. We have to get up at like 5:30 so we can be there plenty early. It takes us about 2 hours to get there. I'll write you all about it as soon as I can. Yours truly, River. P.S. That's cool that nothing happened to the Buckeye in the washer. Okay, page 228. Dear River. So now we have Mina writing to River. It's March 3rd, 2009. I am writing you a quick note from history. We were assigned some readings about empires, but I finished them already. So I decided to use the extra time to write to you. I think it's called Single Ladies Put a Ring on It. Don't worry. I won't tell anyone that you like that song. It's a good song and it's super fun to dance to. Kiku let me play the video from YouTube. He was studying for a chemistry exam, but he let me play it over and over again until I had all the moves down and I could do it right along with Beyonce and those two other girls. I can't do it. I don't do it as good as they do, but it's still fun. You should try learning it. Carlos is a boy and he knows all the steps. Why shouldn't you? I didn't see Coraline yet. Mom had to go into work over the weekend, but she says we will go next weekend for sure. I liked what you said about wanting to do things over. I feel like that a lot. I wish I hadn't yelled at Mom for one thing. OMG. This girl, Marla, who sits near the door, just started laughing so hard that she snorted like a pig. When the teacher asked her what could possibly be funny about the Empire handout, Marla said, Napoleon had the tiniest hands and feet. Your big march on the Capitol sounds very exciting. I hope you save Black Banks and all the mountains. I think you will. I can't wait to hear about it. Peace out, Mina. Okay, page 230. 2nd of March, 2009. So this is River writing back to Mina, and he's going to tell her all about the protest, the march that he did with Mama. Here's what happened. Everybody we knew all piled together on a bus we had rented from a church. It was an old school bus that had been painted white. And instead of saying Crow County Schools down the side like a normal bus, it said John 3:16 on one side and honk, beep, 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 if you love Jesus on the other side. People were honking their horns and truck drivers would sound their big loud horns, honk, honk, at us all the way up the interstate. At first it was funny, but then it got old real quick. On the way up, one of the community organizers, that's what Mama is too, a community organizer, led everybody in songs. We sang all the way to Frankfort, which is a 2-hour drive from Black Banks. We sang, Will the Circle Be Unbroken? And Which Side Are You On? And Hard Times. Those are real old songs that people in the mountains sing all the time. So I'm not sure if you've heard of them or not, but I've been hearing them all my life. It's like if you're from here, you're sort of born knowing those words, like they're part of your body or something. The organizer had changed some of the words to fit our situation. So for example, like in circle, instead of being the real line, like there's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky, it was changed to take my hand and we'll work together. We won't let these mountains die. One of the people on the bus had a fiddle and the other one had a banjo and another had an auto harp. Here's a picture of the one I got from the internet because nobody hardly knows what they are and they are mostly an instrument people here play. So this is the auto harp. This is the kind of instrument they play in Kentucky. They played some of the songs right there in their seats. That woman played the fiddle on Hard Times, and the way she played it was like you could hear all of her sadness pouring out right through the strings, the fiddle. Fiddle's like a violin. She closed her eyes, and when she played, I don't even know how to describe her face. It was like a rock somehow, how hard and firm and solid it was. Her face made the song even better. I guess there were about 60 of us on the bus, and I knew just about everybody on there. All the boys from the team were there with us, and they didn't sing along, but they were ready for the march. They were into it. Mom and I sat right behind Dr. Patel and Chandra on the way up there. Chandra turned around and talked to me most of the time. She asked me all kinds of questions and had me tell her the whole story of when the rocks caved in and when I told her about thinking Mark was probably dead and how scary it was. Her face sort of fell in on itself and her eyebrows went together. And then I realized she was crying. Her tears fell in 2 lines down her face, and then she had to turn away. I thought I had said something to hurt her feelings because Dr. Patel was patting on her and saying, shh, shh, it's all right. And then he talked to her in Hindi, talked in Hindi to her. I'm guessing it was Hindi. I don't really know. But since that's the language you speak, I'm figuring that's what they speak too. Sorry if this is stupid of me. I don't know if everybody in India speaks the same language or not. And that calmed her down. After a while, she turned around in her seat and said, "Forgive me, River. I'm sorry I got upset. Your story just reminded me of something bad that happened to my brother in Mumbai." Later, I Googled Mumbai because I didn't know how to spell it. And the search engine came up and said, "Do you mean Mumbai, India?" So I guess that's how you spell it. When I typed in Mumbai, one of the first things that came up was Mumbai attacks. So I read about these bombings that happened there last year. Do you know about these? It might not even be what happened to her brother, but somehow I felt like it was. I don't know why. We were all caught up in singing when we got close to the Capitol, but then everybody hushed. The hush worked its way back through the bus from the front to the back because Mama was standing by the door with her hand over her mouth. When everybody got silent, she pointed out the window and said, "Oh my Lord." We looked out and we couldn't believe it. There is a big wide street that goes for a straight mile in front of the Capitol, which sits up on a hill. We were on the bridge at the end of the street, and the entire mile of the road in front of us was taken up by people. The police had shut down the street because there were so many. They're saying now that at least 10,000 people were there. I had never seen so many people in one place in my life. All of them were carrying signs. They were from all over the state and all over the country even. Mama said that they were there to help us fight. So we marched. My sign said, "My best friend lost his leg to MTR." So his sign was about his friend Mark. I asked Mark if it was okay to put that on a sign, and he laughed his loud, crazy laugh and said, "Hell yes!" And his mother slapped at him and acted shocked over him saying that. But then she laughed and said, "Yes, River, yes. Carry that sign for all of us." So I did. I was also carrying a mason jar full of water that I had gotten out of the creek. The water was solid orange. Is water supposed to be orange? No, it's not. It looked like watered down carrot juice sloshing around in there. So he had the water from the creek. I can't explain to you properly how it felt to be with all those people walking up that street. Mama and the other community organizers told us we could be the most effective if we would be absolutely silent until we got to the Capitol steps. So we were, all of us just walking along. And it seemed to me that every single person's face looked like the fiddlers had. It took me a long time to figure out what that look was, but I knew it was defiance, right? Fighting spirit. I learned this word in history class back when we were talking about that boy who stood in front of the tanks in China. And that was the way I felt too, defiant. And that was the way everybody looked like they felt too. It was cold as knives. There had been a big snow a week before that hadn't really melted all the way, especially where it had been pushed into little hills on the sidewalks. And in one yard we passed, all the snow had melted except for a snowman that stood there completely solid, like he had fallen from the sky into that brown, wet yard. It was so cold that every time I breathed, I could feel the cold air way, way down in my lungs. My nose felt like an ice cube. But we were bundled up good with layers of clothes, so the only thing that got really cold was my face. In some weird way, it felt good though, too. Good too, though. All along the street, there were state troopers, some police, standing with their hands on their hips, not looking any of us in the eye. They didn't say anything, but they kept their faces completely square and had guns right on their belts, like we were dangerous criminals or something. Not all of us could fit, so some people had to spill over onto the lawn on the sides of the Capitol steps. But when we had all finished walking up the street, Mama stood at the very top step and yelled into a bullhorn, "Whose mountains?" And the whole crowd hollered back, "Our mountains." And then Mama said, "Whose streams?" And the crowd said, "Our streams." That's the water. And then Mama said, "Whose future?" And every single one of us said as loud as we could, "Our future." We kept saying it over and over until it sounded like a song. And I believe that everybody in the town must have heard us. I bet people heard it through their walls and wondered what had happened. I imagined them going to their windows and looking out to see what the ruckus was all about. I thought that some of them probably stepped out on their porches to look toward our sound coming from the Capitol steps, standing on the porch in their sock feet, hugging themselves against the cold. And then all at once, Governor Evans came out the front door of the Capitol steps with 2 state policemen on either side. Mama said he had never come out to talk to our side before, so that this was a real first. She says he is a good man, but not good enough. I think this means he wants to do the right thing, but he isn't brave enough to stand up to the coal companies. Mama says this is the problem with a lot of politicians. They want to do right, but they're too scared to, she says. The governor stood there and answered questions in the cold. He hadn't worn his coat, and I think this was on purpose, so he'd have an excuse to not stand there too long since it was cold. He didn't give any real answers to anything. When someone would say, "Why didn't he put a stop to MTR?" he'd say something that sounded rehearsed, like he was reading it off the note cards. "We are looking into different options for making sure that the coal industry stays productive while also protecting our citizens." He just kept finding a way to avoid the questions. Then Mama turned to him and said, "Why is it that we as Americans are having to come here to ask that our children be protected, that our water be protected? Those are the 2 main things that we should always be looking out for." And a big roar rose up from the crowd, everybody hollering and clapping. Woo! Governor said he didn't think our water was polluted, that he'd drink out of any stream in Eastern Kentucky. When he said that, everybody started booing, "Boo!" And then all at once, the whole first line of people, Mama, my mom, and Dr. Patel and Chandra, and all the boys from my basketball team, and lots of others, were bobbing their signs up and down and chanting, "Save our water, save our water," over and over. Everybody's anger spread out all over us. And then I saw some state troopers were moving in, the police were coming, 1 on each side, and the governor was moving towards the door. He was leaving, looking every which way, while some of the policemen at his sides talked into their walkie-talkies. It felt like everything was about to blow up, like it was all about to go wrong. So I stepped towards the governor. I don't know why, but it just felt like the right thing to do. A state trooper, a police, stepped toward me, his eyes right on me. And I couldn't believe it, but he put his hand on the handle of his pistol, of his gun. When he did that, the governor put his hand across the cop's chest. And I took another step forward, seeing the governor's eyes were on me too. All through the crowd, I could hear people shushing one another. Shh, shh, shh. The sound ran back through all the people like a slow, strong wind through the summer leaves. Shh, shh. I guess it wasn't much more than a couple seconds, but it seemed like I stood there looking right at the governor a long time. And finally, I held out the jar of nasty water I had been carrying the whole time, and I said, "Drink it, then." Everybody had gotten so quiet that even people far away could hear my voice bouncing off all that marble of the Capitol building. The governor laughed a little bit in the back of his throat and said, "What, son?" And I said, "This came out of our creek. Our creek was clean as a whistle until that mine moved in next door. Now it looks like this." He patted me on the head like I was a dog. So I forced the jar right into his hands and I said, "You said you drink the water out of any creek we had. So drink it," I said. Then I didn't want to sound disrespectful, so I added, "Sir." There were so many cameras flashing in front of me that I had to blink to see. It felt like something was about to happen, like everybody was holding their breath. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing or not, but it felt like the only thing to do. He just laughed again and said, "Aw, son, I don't believe I will." And then once again, every single person started booing, "Boo," and bobbing their signs up and down in the air. So the signs came made of booing sound all their own. The governor went back inside the Capitol building, waving both his hands and smiling, as he thought everybody was applauding him instead of booing him. He wouldn't come back out. Mama rushed over to me and held me real close to her. And then she squatted down and looked me in the eye. Her lips were trembling, but not from the cold. "That was a real brave thing, River. Now none of us will have to get arrested, which will save everybody a whole lot of money." "Why not?" I said. I was a little disappointed, to tell you the truth. I had been scared of getting arrested, but now it seemed like we failed somehow by not getting arrested. "Because what you did will get us more attention than getting arrested. You did things the most peaceful way of all, by just standing up and asking a question. And every photographer here took a picture of it." It was a long day. We stood out in the cold and listened to lots of people speak against MTR. And then some people sang songs and led us in chants. And some people went in and talked to the legislatures. People kept coming by and shaking my hand and telling me I had done a brave thing. By the time we got back on the bus, I was freezing and so tired that I fell asleep even before we got back on the interstate. At some point, I woke up and my head was in Chandra's lap, and she was singing a pretty little song. I may have just dreamed it, though I don't know. Then later, I was aware of Mom and Mama walking me into the house and putting me into my bed. I had never been so tired in my whole life. First thing this morning, I got up and went right to writing you because I felt like you were with me the whole time. And I wanted to put it all down on paper while it was still fresh in my mind, hoping you could see it too. Yours, Riverdene Justice. Wow. Yay, River. He was so brave.